Good morning, beautiful, lovely dreamers. It is December 21st, 2023. This is episode 22 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. And oh my gosh, I have surpassed 21 episodes of the PaulCast here, which puts me, I think, in the top like 5% or 1% of all podcasts, since most of them fail. I saw some statistic about I saw some statistics about the statistics. But ultimately 21 episodes is another significant cutting off period in terms of podcasts that fail and don't keep going. So this has been a good experience for me to just commit myself to every day to checking in and talking about my journey, generally just as a dreamer, someone who is going for a pretty big, audacious dream. And it just so happens specifically that the dream I'm pursuing is that of comedy, acting, that whole genre. So that is what I'm up to. And just having an opportunity to share my journey, the lessons, the struggles, the victories with the internets, and to allow anybody who this resonates with to have an opportunity to connect with my journey, and then hopefully in some way have a positive influence on their journey. That is what I am up to. So I'll tell you, I am still in this weird sleeping schedule, which has really been making the last couple of days really difficult. It's really thrown me off my goals. I'm trying to flip it around. It's so hard to flip it around because it pretty much requires me to stay up all night and then all day the next day so that I can actually try to fall asleep the following night. And what keeps happening is sometime in the middle of the day or in the early evening, I end up falling asleep and then just crashing for too long. And then it just kind of repeats the cycle. So that's what I'm trying to push through so that I can get back on track. And I did do some writing yesterday. I have a goal to write every day and been doing pretty well with that. If you saw my podcast or listened to my podcast yesterday, I talked about not allowing little slip-ups to completely throw you off the path. Just let a slip-up be a slip. Let a slip-up be a slip-up. And don't turn misdemeanors into felonies. So have I missed a day or so of writing? Sure. But overall, I have been writing a lot more. And man, it's really fascinating just trying to write every day. Just every day going, okay, I'm going to write some comedy today. What can I write? What can I refine? What can I work on? What's going to work? What isn't going to work? Yesterday, I had this idea that I started pulling on the thread, and it just wasn't working with what I was seeing on the page. It started out with me just trying to talk about the fact that there is a fine line between a man coming across as creepy to a woman or a man coming across as sexy to a woman, because ultimately two different men can ultimately do or say the same thing, and one guy's going to come off creepy and one guy's going to come off sexy. You know, like a text message like, oh, I've been thinking about you. That could be incredibly sexy or incredibly creepy, depending on circumstances. So that was sort of the overall concept that I was starting to play with. And then I thought, oh, that might be a fun song. Now, I don't do a ton, matter of fact, very little written music comedy, although I do have a music background and I do a lot of music improvisation. But in terms of writing scripted, crafted comedic songs for my act, I really only have one bit where I do that. But I thought, oh, maybe that's a fun idea for a song. I'll kind of have like an R&B sort of like sexy type song, and I'm talking about, you know, is this creepy or is this sexy, and try to play with that. And I pulled on the thread 2 or 3 different times. I went down on my piano. I was trying to like find some chord progressions. I started trying to write some lyrics. and just nothing was really popping to me. And then I tried scrapping it and tried a different sort of lyrical idea. So, that is one of the elements of being in a creative space is, sometimes it just doesn't come that easy. And, the rough draft is very rarely the final draft. Now, I've had those experiences where I have an idea, I write it down, and it just sort of comes out. And by the time it's performance ready, there's not much adjustment from when I thought of the idea to where I'm actually presenting it on stage. Like the initial jokes just worked the first time and are still working. That's not usually the case, though. Usually it's starts out as an idea or a concept that I think is funny or something that is intriguing to me or something that I find particularly that I just feel a certain way about. I could be upset about it. I could be impressed by it. I could be hurt by it. As long as there's an emotional attachment to whatever it is that I'm writing about, well, then I can take that concept and then begin to experiment with how to craft whatever it is that I'm thinking of into jokes and punchlines and bits and tags and all of the things. So, and then there's just times when I have an idea, I start to work on it. Maybe I even get it to open mics and it's just not, it's just not there yet. Oh man, good that I'm yawning because maybe that means I can actually turn this whole sleeping schedule around. So anyway, I worked on that, not a ton, not hours and hours, but, maybe 30, 45 minutes of trying to write some lyrics, write some song ideas. And then finally, after a while, I just go like, nah, I'm not there yet. And this isn't it. Like, I'm just like, no, this isn't it. I know the concept is kind of there, but the way that I'm thinking about executing, I just don't really feel a connection to it and don't really see it playing out on stage the way that I'm going about it. And the lyrics that I was writing weren't particularly funny or creative or impressive. I'm just like, no, I want to take the same idea, this whole creepy versus sexy idea. I want to hang on to it. I've had this idea for actually quite a while. But I just haven't quite yet found the right vehicle, the right joke structure, the right song structure, whatever it is to really dive in and turn that into a comedic bit. And to everybody out there in the dreaming, going for something space, I think that is something that we need to get used to, which is whatever the idea that we have, whatever the thought or the concept is, just being okay with the fact that not every idea works out immediately. Sometimes they don't work out at all. I really think the challenge and the opportunity is the capacity to continue to come up with ideas and to try to vet them as quickly as possible. And then once the right idea surfaces or comes around that has the right energy to it and you can see it and you can feel it, then that's the idea that gets the attention. I know I'm kind of talking generally here. I'm sort of merging my specific genre of comedy with just a more creative pursuit in general. But I think the important part is to always be generating, always be writing, always be creating, always have a pad and a paper. I never leave the house now without having a pad and paper. If I have an idea while I'm driving in the car, I make sure that I click on a voice memo or whatever, and we'll just start talking about it while I drive. If I have an idea sitting down anywhere, I'll grab my notepad, jot it down. If I don't have my notepad handy, I make sure to jot it down on my phone notes. And there have been plenty of times when, I'm starting to write and I'm going, nothing's coming. And then I'll just scroll back into my notebook a little bit, or I'll go into my phone and be like, wait, what was that idea I had? And then I'll see that, and I'll go like, oh yeah, I had that idea that sounded funny at the time. And it's kind of humbling and maybe a little depressing to think, how many ideas have I had that because I didn't have a system in place to write them down when they came to mind, have been lost to the ether forever and will never come back. And had I a system in place to make sure I was jotting everything down, man, I could have a whole other hour of comedy bits ready to go. So just something that I have been really thinking about and keeping in mind is to be always be writing, always be creating, always be jotting ideas down. And also understanding that not every bit's a winner, not every bit's hilarious, and that's okay. And I just need to continue to create, because sometimes a good bit does come out of it. This year, I've probably written maybe 15 to 20 minutes of new material, and probably half of that I'm actually performing regularly, and the other half I'm sort of still working out in open mics. Like, I know I'm on the right track, but it's not quite in the pocket yet for me to introduce to my act on a regular basis. So coming into the new year, I really want to see myself come up with a whole new hour of comedy. I feel like, just in terms of the trajectory of my comedy career, so I started in 2014, with the first sort of round of jokes that I wrote and the first round of bits. And a lot of times I've still been doing material that I wrote 6-7 years ago, for several reasons. First of all, because I know that material so well and I know it works. And so whenever I'm in a situation where I really want to hit, of course, I'm going to go to tried and true. It's like, if you're a band out there touring, you're going to play your greatest hits because that's what's going to get the crowd going. But then I'm also wanting to challenge myself to incorporate new material and to bring up the new material to get it to match the tried and true stuff. So when I look at like the first 7 or 8 years of my comedy career, and that 7 or 8 years, I wasn't all in on comedy at all. I mean, definitely not compared to a lot of the comics and that I met in LA who were doing hundreds and hundreds of open mics, like more than one a day on average, and writing a ton, and were just a lot more sneaking their teeth into comedy. And I was a little more wish-washy. It's like, do I want to be an actor? Do I want to be a comedian? Do I want to do commercials? Do I want a theater? And I was doing a lot of different things, so I was sort of spread thin. And then in 2019 was the first time I really anchored down and just said, all right, comedy is a challenging of enough as a craft that it deserves my full attention to be honed. Secondly, it's unbelievably saturated and competitive. And so if I am not going all in on this, there's just not a chance that I'm going to be successful, because there are so many comedians who want it more than me and are working harder than me. And because they're working harder and honing their craft more, they're funnier than me. And because they're hustling more, they have more connections than me. So what am I even doing here? So 2019, I really anchored down, and I ended up doing about 400 open mics or performances that year. Got into a bunch of festivals. Things were starting to go well. I had booked out a bunch of really exciting opportunities in 2020. And then I don't know if you heard, but pretty much my entire 2020 performance calendar got canceled, and all of that work sort of disappeared in terms of the momentum that I had built. And so in 2021, I sort of was in kind of limbo. I was kind of doing stand-up, but, LA was shut down. You couldn't really do a lot of stand-up. I was doing some Zoom stuff, but I was pretty off of my consistent effort to be writing and performing. 2022 came along and I started to regroup and started to go back at it. And then I got in a relationship that brought me back to Arizona and really threw me off the path. I ended up getting out of that relationship at the end of 2022, and now 2023, I feel myself really starting to get back into pursuing stand-up comedy with the type of energy and fervor that it warrants to really be good at it and to really start honing the craft, not only honing the craft as a comedian, but also really trying to focus on, the business side of it and marketing myself and putting myself out there and hustling and understanding that it is a saturated industry. There's so many comics. There's so many funny comics. And not only is it imperative that I try to hone the craft to be as funny as I possibly can be, but I also need to be humble enough and open enough to really marketing myself as aggressively as I possibly can using all of the resources available to me. And that is what I have been up to, and what I have been thinking about today is just the process of continuing to create, to produce, and to market yourself. Man, what is it? I think I'm gonna butcher this. I think it was Will Smith quoting Arnold Schwarzenegger, if I remember right. You can fact check me out there, but I think it was Will Smith in his biography. He was talking about how he wanted to become a movie star, and he was at some event or whatever, and he saw Sylvester Stallone, I think Bruce Willis, and Arnold Schwarzenegger were all hanging out. So he's like, oh, well, there's the 3 biggest movie stars ever, so I'm going to go talk to them and get some advice. And so he went to go get some advice, and Arnold Schwarzenegger said something like, you have to be, how did he word it? You have to be like the politician of your movie. You have to advertise, kiss babies, promote. And somewhere in there was this quote that said something like, early to bed, early to rise, work hard, and advertise, or something like that. I might be mixing stories. But it really emphasized to me how important it is to not only hone the craft, but to advertise the craft. And I think that, for me, has been one of the biggest hang-ups and one of the biggest challenges. It's almost like, well, I want to be a famous comedian, but I don't want anybody to know I exist. I want fame and fortune and opportunity without anybody knowing me, because I don't want all of the backlash that comes from being visible. And I'm already experiencing that just in the small sort of sphere that I currently occupy of, negative comments and criticism and people close to me calling me up and telling me what they think of what I'm doing, good or bad. It's like, now that I'm putting myself out there, everybody feels entitled to not only have an opinion, but to express that opinion. And as though it's, I don't know, that's weird. It's weird that people feel that they have that inclination just to be, oh, well, I saw this video and I didn't like it, and here's why. I'm just going, okay. Why don't you go put out a video and do it better? I don't know. It's fascinating, but this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm up to, and this is what I'm doing, and I am just learning to love this journey and love this process and all of the struggles and setbacks, and as well as the victories and the positive experiences that I have as I'm along this journey. So everybody, keep on it. Keep true to your heart. Keep grinding away. Let's experience some dreams together and accomplishing some incredible goals and life experiences as we move along the journey of our individual dreams collectively. And I am happy and grateful to be along on the ride with you. So let's make it a great day, December 21st, 2023, episode 22 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. I love you all, and I will talk to you soon.